영화부터 디바이너일 것이다 라고 믿어 의심치 않습니다. 러셀 크로우 씨 무대 위로 모시겠습니다. 박수 부탁드립니다. 일자를 그려서 여러분들과 이야기를 앉은 상태로 자연스럽게 사진 찍어주시죠.
It's very exciting for me to come to Korea for the first time, and I was very surprised and pleased that there were that many people at the airport to say hello when I arrived, and really looking forward to this conversation with you all. 새해 복 많이 받으세요. I've always been very much a narrative-based actor. I choose the projects that I do very carefully. I call it the goosebump rule. You know, if I'm reading a script and if I have a physical reaction, then that's usually the movie that I do. I don't necessarily focus on pedigree or who else I'm working with and stuff. For me, it's always been about the story. So having that attitude built in, the transition was quite simple, really, to go from being the actor to the director. And I've also worked over the course of my career with some of the greatest cinematic artists that exists. You know, Ridley Scott, Michael Mann, Peter Weir, Darren Aronofsky, Tom Hooper. So you learn as you go, and sometimes you learn things that you want to do, and sometimes you learn things that you'll never do. But overall, the desire to be a director has been there for a long time. But I was just waiting for the right project, and I wasn't actively searching for it. In a strange way, it found me. And when I read the script, I had that same sort of physical reaction, but there was one other layer as well, and that was the desire to take responsibility for that particular story. I have a great interest in music and have been releasing records since I was 16 or 17 in 1981. So, you know, in film, music can do a lot for you. It can emphasize the things that you're trying to talk about, or it can help assist you take the audience on a journey. So, yeah, the soundtrack's very important. The principal composer for the movie is a guy called David Hirschfelder, but also we've used music from Richard Tognetti and a wonderful Italian composer called Ludovico Einaudi. There is also a song at the end of the film called Love Was My Alibi, which is sung by a Swedish singer called Chris Fogelmark. I deeply hope and pray that I'm the father that they need in any given situation. I'm very pleased to hear you say that you were emotionally touched by the movie. You know, when you make a film like this that is so specific to the cultures of two countries or three countries, Australia, New Zealand and Turkey, you do wonder to yourself if the messages and the emotion of the film will be universal. And so far, you know, with the responses we've had from places around the world, it seems to be so it's very pleasing. When I was a young actor in Australia, before I started making feature films, I did a lot of theatre, a lot of rock and roll and a lot of theatre, which is probably why my voice sounds like this. But when I was a young man, I used to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I used to go into a park called Centennial Park in Sydney, and into a grove of pine trees. And I'd spread the pine needles out, make a space. And in the dirt, I would write the things that I wanted to happen. And then I'd cover it back up with pine needles. It was kind of probably a sort of a frivolous thing, really, when you look back on it, and ultimately meaningless. But I knew I was the only actor awake in Australia at 5 o'clock in the morning, legitimately, as opposed to having stayed up the night before. And that was kind of, to me, it was the discipline of that is truly what brought success to me, because I was prepared to do things that other actors weren't prepared to do. You know, in terms of a turning point in my career, you know, the first feature film that I got is a movie called The Crossing, directed by a guy called George Ogilvy. I was 25 at the time. I'd done a couple of thousand theatre performances and rock and roll performances. And I'd probably auditioned for many, many movies, but had failed in every one of those auditions. So the turning point was actually just getting a film. There was another sort of really silly thing that happened when I was about 10 years old. My front tooth got kicked out in a rugby league game, and I refused to have it fixed. So there I was trying to work as an actor in my teen years and early 20s with only one front tooth. The fact that I got work was amazing, really, considering, especially on camera work. But when I met George Ogilvy, he asked me to explain the story of the tooth and why I haven't got it fixed. And I said to him, because I felt that it was an event that had happened in my life. It was just something that, formed part of who I was, and it was an authentic thing for me to not get the tooth fixed. And he listened very politely to the story. And then he said to me, well, I know that you really like to commit to the roles that you play. And here's the thing that you have to understand. The role that you're going to play in my movie, Johnny Ryan, the character you're going to play, he has two front teeth. And all at once, George made me see the sort of silliness of what I'd been doing. But also the fact that he had connected with how serious I was about being an actor. And oddly enough, as soon as I got my tooth fixed, I started working in films all the time. Well, very close, but there is a book that's been very popular in Australia in the last little while called The Happiest Refugee by a Vietnamese man called An Do. And I'm currently in the middle of developing that story. It's about a Vietnamese family who get on a boat, on a 9-meter fishing boat, 36 people, and they travel from Vietnam to Australia in the hope of finding a better life. Everybody for turning up today. It was a bit of a surprise to walk through that door and see so many of you. I'm looking forward to seeing how the audience in Korea responds to the movie. It's a very heartfelt tale. It's something that you should perhaps, share the experience of with your family. Thank you so much for welcoming me as kindly as you have, and all the very best. And as I said earlier, Happy New Year. See you. Many better see you.